Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. Doubts begin to grow about whether Paul Woodman really does know where Adrian Newey is going. Who wrote that, Tiff? Who wrote that? Well, I'm like Ron Burgundy, just read the auto cue. We take a look back at the glorious weekend at Goodwood, and of course, take our usual look around the world of motorsport from WEC in Brazil to Indycar in Iowa, and back to Britain for World Superbikes and British GTs, and a few Caterhams going around Cadwell Park. But first, what's all this Adrian Newey thing? I think my reliable source at Ferrari may not be so reliable.
No. Oh, now you're admitting it might not be. When you were 100% before. 100%. I know it's 100% Ferrari. And now, I met Jeremy Clarkson. Do I believe Jeremy Clarkson, who thinks he's Newey shopping for a house in Oxfordshire? I suddenly thought when they said that about Adrian shopping for a house in Oxfordshire, hasn't he got a house in Oxfordshire? I'm not sure where Adrian's got a British base camp, or not. He must have a house somewhere in England.
He must have a house. I know. Cars here and stuff.
Maybe he just wants a bigger house. But anyway, so it's all sort of swinging towards Aston Martin and McLaren even now coming in, the rumour mongers. So have you phoned your source at Ferrari to find out what's going on?
Well, no, is a short answer, because no, I don't know. But it was a done deal. It was in the bag, done deal. But
you were just guessing. You spoke to the wrong,
not guessing.
You spoke to the wrong person at a bar late at night. Someone told you, and you thought, that's it. You got a scoop.
He was from Ferrari and a very senior position within Ferrari Motorsport. Had no reason to lead me along the garden path, although it's very easy to lead me along the garden path. So
Red Bull Liam Lawson had this aero test this week. Liam Lawson now the sort of hot name in the frame for getting them dumping Perez and putting Lawson in. Otherwise, not much gossip.
What do you feel about that?
Yeah, good. I mean, nice to see someone like him. I'd rather see Yuki go in and put Liam into RB and someone else alongside him, maybe Ocon, maybe. I still think Ricciardo needs to go on the PR tour and not have a seat for another year. Or, of course, there's still Isaac Hadjar, the French kid, who did so well in Formula 2 and a bit of a nothing FP1 did in the Red Bull, but maybe was under strict instructions not to damage it. So Isaac Hadjar, I'd love to see Hadjar in RB and get RB back to being rookies like it used to be. So then you'd have, say, Liam Lawson and Hadjar in RB and Yuki Tsunoda in Red Bull. That's what I'd like to
that'd
see.
Be good.
They're quite a different team now. Or maybe even Freddie Slater. Did you see our fast Freddie? 3 more wins at the weekend. It was a huge field, Italian Formula 4 of talented kids. He had a huge race. But the last race, he was just neck and neck with this Australian kid. But Freddie there's been a lot of close battles, and he always seems to be the one that comes out in the lead when it comes to crossing the line on the last lap. So fast Freddie doing himself no harm at all.
I mean, he is some talent, because he won all 3. First race, Macau, he won all 3. And then
Macau, he was beaten by Lindblad. Macau,
thank you.
He was beaten by Arvin Lindblad. Of course, he's a star of Formula 3 at the moment. So
has he been beaten by this at Macau? I thought he won all 3.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
no, he didn't
good job Macau. We got you for the sanity check.
But we've got so many Brits like that. In Formula 2, we've got Zach O'Sullivan. In Formula 3, we've got Browning. And then in Formula 3, we've got Lindblad as well. And now Freddie Slater coming through. There's a whole train of talented Brits. But then there are so many talented drivers all over the world trying to get into those top 20 places, which is why we need to clear out people like Ricciardo and Bottas and Zhao and who else I can't think of at the moment. But obviously they want to stay.
Sergeant.
Goodwood.
Going back to that, and that's why for me that if you ask anybody, and I think you'll be included, even though you've done 14 Le Mans, is if you could race any race, would it be Daytona? Would it be Le Mans? Would it be Monaco, Formula 1? It's always got to be Formula 1 because it's such a small, tiny elite field.
Yeah. But, have a couple of years, and then if you're not quite good enough, Logan, it's time to leave. And if you're not quite good enough, Zhao, it's time to leave. And if you're not quite good enough, Bottas anymore, or Ricciardo, you've had your millions, you've earned your millions. Don't hog the seats, even though people love you. We all love you, but there we go. And I guess I couldn't make Goodwood this weekend. You were down there. How many days were you there? Was it as glorious as ever?
I did the whole shebang. Got there Wednesday night with Porsche. we're so lucky doing what we do because we get invited by lots of different manufacturers. So I somehow, I think Porsche probably sent the invitation to the wrong Paul, actually, because after last year. But
you call them Porsche. You've got to stick to that if you're being invited nicely.
No,
Porsche.
I had this conversation with all the team, all the Porsche teams. So most of them say Porsche internally, but quite a few still say Porsche because it's. Do you say BMW when you talk about BMW? Do you say München when you talk about Munich?
I was a factory Porsche driver. I have to call them Porsche.
Yeah, I get it.
So you drove up the hill. What did you drive up the hill in?
I only did one supercar run, and it was bizarrely. I think they're taking the mickey a little bit. They gave me a Porsche that had no rear wing to start off with, so they gave me the new 911 ST, which is a manual 911. Crazy how beautiful little machine. My favorite 911 manuals and no wings, no scaffolding in the boot. Yeah, just a beautiful car. Yeah, so it's like the GT3 touring without the sort of scaffolding and stuff. So it's a beautiful little car.
Perfect.
Only worth about £500,000. So thankfully they told me that afterwards. So that's the only supercar run that I did. Then I did a few other runs, a couple of other Porsches, Macan Turbo, which is lightning off the start because electric, and the KN Turbo GTS as well, which is a V8, lovely bit of V8 power. And then I drove the Yongwang 1200 horsepower U8, which it was wet, and
is that the sporting name for the BYDs or not?
No, it's the posh name for BYD. It's the Lexus of the Toyota. It's
that's what I mean. It's a BYD.
Honda.
It's a BYD company. So was that a bit frightening then, with all that electric power shooting you off up the hill?
It was, because it was just so much power, and you got motor on each wheel, electric motor on each wheel, and you just you know the computer's doing its stuff, but you didn't.
Well, you hope. Did you see the Lotus? Did you see the Lotus? Now, Harry, the commentator, Harry was saying that he reckoned that with the computer not working out which power was going to which wheel, but the driver just lit it up so much as you can, and with a slightly cambered road. To be honest, I wouldn't be 100% sure the computers let him down. But this is the trouble. These electric things, they get him too much power. And
it was a prototype. 2,000 horsepower electric prototype, the Lotus. If you haven't seen it, Google Lotus crash at Festival of Speed. But actually, see, I'm with you. I thought it's sometimes you can get those launches wrong, and it's a very narrow sort of launch, and it is a bit undulated. But in the driver's defense, I don't know who the driver was, but in the driver's defense, apparently he did the kill switch when he went into the barriers, into the hay bales, and that one wheel carried on going. All the others cut off. So maybe it was electrical. So otherwise it wouldn't really make sense.
The trouble is now at Goodwood, there seems to be too many, in my mind, these sort of one-off £4 million one-off build. There was an American company that claimed, I saw Reddit this morning, the fastest road legal car up the hill. And I saw this thing with a sort of central steering wheel and a splitter out the front and a huge wing on the back. And I don't know where it was. It the Z? Yes, I don't know where it's road legal. Maybe in America they let things like that on the road. I can't believe it would have a European approval to be road legal. And so many donuts going on. I must admit, I was getting bored with watching highlights of yet another person doing a donut. Did you do a donut in your Porsche in front of the house, or did you actually drive normal?
But in the same run as the Yangwang, it was very wet. The pro driver in the Bentley Continental GT did a donut, and he didn't mean to do a donut. He went on the grass.
That was a big off. That was a big tank snapper. It was a mess. I saw that on the film.
Yeah, turn 2, which is very unusual. Turn 1.
But I'd much rather see, proper racing cars or historic cars. And
but there is that too.
Hill was in that Can-Am car, and he just drove up really thundering V8 in the back, and that looks so much more spectacular than someone coming around doing yet another donut.
There is that. There is something for everybody. There is so much from
what I'm saying is
concept cars.
Too much concept, but there's too much donuts.
Maybe what the bits you saw, but the concept cars, I think, bring them on. It's brilliant that there's instead of going to Geneva or Pebble Beach where they're static, you've got this amazing facility to hear them and to see them and to smell them. Amazing.
What about
for the donuts? The crowd love the donuts. They love it, Tiff. No, but then you see these guys. Saw Elfyn Evans in his Toyota. Hammering on the brakes, the front end goes down so much, and he does a donut perfect. The car control of these guys. So I enjoyed that. I'll tell you what else I enjoyed. We went to the ball, as we did last year, but you dumped me this year.
Yeah.
And on our table was the very tall, very lovely, very charismatic, so completely opposite to you and I, Harry Benjamin. I sat next to him for dinner. So
Grand Prix commentator for the future, the Grand Prix man.
Well, current and future, yeah. So future for sure, like full-time, and currently part-time. So, and he's a listener of our show. So I was quite proud of that. Yeah.
I'm sure I complimented him on Twitter actually about 4 years ago, 2 years ago.
He thought you were rude to him. I said, well, never have I ever seen you be rude to him. So maybe you can clarify that now, whether you were or not.
Harry. Maybe he had a bad race, so I criticised him. I mean, if there's too much shouting, I might criticise him. I could have sworn I tweeted, and he tweeted back. Thanks. I can't remember now. Maybe I'm confusing him with someone else. Anyway, if I confused you with someone else, Harry, I did. It was obviously a constructive criticism, Harry, and you've obviously learned from if I did ever criticise you. But I liked your Grand Prix commentary, Harry.
We don't say criticism. We say feedback, positive feedback. That's what it's all about. Giving people feedback. And you can dance as well. He busted a few shapes on the dance floor to the Who. This is a motorsport podcast, by the way. If you're just tuning in, this is all about motorsport.
So, but did you get the firework display, the show? What was the show this year? Motorbikes leaping, dancing girls, firebombs.
No, look, someone doing some drifting on this tiny stage in this tiny little drift car, and then around some girls that were dancing with fire and stuff. But it was spectacular. To be honest with you, I'll be perfectly honest with you, that was more spectacular to me than the Who. The Who came on,
but it wasn't the full Who. It was just
Daltrey.
Just Daltrey up front, but where was the pinball wizard? Where was the guitar? There was a violinist playing.
Why didn't they start with an absolute banger as well? Because to be honest, quite a few people left after the first song. And let me tell you something as well. I was really disappointed. I'm going to say this on air. Never meet your heroes. So Damon Hill was standing directly behind me the whole way through with his very lovely, what I assume is his wife, and then. When after the first song I was leaving and not leaving straight away, but leaving my position, I said, "Oh, nice to meet you, Damon. I work with Tiff. Pleasure to meet you." I might as well have just said, "Oh, Damon, here's a turd sandwich." He was so off. I was like, "Oh,
no,
thanks,
he's one of the nicest men in the world."
I know. He was so off with me.
You must have trodden on his toe or something. That's just not Damon. That is not Damon. Are you sure it was Damon Hill? You must have got the wrong person. That's not Damon at all.
So off with no, he was, and I was with somebody. I said, "I can't believe it. I'm such a massive fan." I think I even said to him, "I'm a big fan."
You must have been acting like a twat or something. Well, you weren't leaping up and down.
I was driving. I was sober. He wasn't even put off with my dancing. I was so. It's just very respectful.
Who else did you meet? So you're in the driver's lounge, and so you got spoilt by everybody. You got a ticket to the ball. You're in the driver's lounge. Did you meet any heroes in the driver's in there?
Not really any heroes. Alonso, I saw him at the top, which was nice. Had a sort of literally a very brief encounter with Alonso. But I like people. I like catching up with people like David Green, the commentator. Nikki Shields is there. She wasn't doing commentary, but yeah, just people. Just sort of old friends.
Coulthard around? You see Coulthard with his 6'6" girlfriend? He wasn't there.
No, but I saw
the Frank Kitties was a pleasure.
The Frank Kitties are everywhere. Around. They're always around. They've always got their race suits on. Always looking very cool. And Hakkinen as well.
Mickey was there. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, he was.
I saw pictures.
So it's brilliant. If you haven't been to Goodwood Festival of Speed,
what was the big central display? I saw one picture. I didn't know what it was.
MG 75 years or 100 years? God, I should know this. But
what was the car?
75 years it must be.
There's only one car, wasn't there?
Well, the new MG. No, there was two. There was like a propeller on the sculpture, and one end had the current latest car, and then there was, I guess, the first MG that was made. Or I should have read the sculpture, but it's non-stop. I was doing 20,000 steps a day. You go from one paddock to the other paddock.
It's exhausting, Kumar. It's exhausting.
And BYD looked after me as well, as did Porsche. So thank you. Oh, and Pirelli. So thank you to those lovely things. Right, let's get on to the proper motorsport.
Yeah, round the world. I was obviously doing my round the world watching whilst you were swanning around at Goodwood. And funny enough, all the racing was just a bit processional. There was no real formula that I said, God, that was so exciting to watch that race. Which does happen sometimes. Obviously, we often criticise dull racing, but there's usually one highlight of the weekend But the highlight has to be the World Endurance Championship, really, Brazil, the hypercars going down to that wonderful Sao Paolo circuit. And it was, unfortunately, Toyota seemed to come back on song after all the balance of powers and whatever. And they were by far the quickest, which rather made it a bit of a processional race. But it was just great to watch them. You know, that track is so tight and twiddly, and there were so many overtakes going on and three wides and lapping the GT3 cars. So beautiful scenery. So even though the race wasn't intense, it's still a spectacular thing to watch. But it's these 6-hour races, they're a real enthusiast's thing. You know, it's not going to be a quick snatch that a sort of vague motorsport fan will get involved with. But it's just great to watch. And, you know, the number 8 Toyota won in the end, but the other Toyota did have a problem. A fuel pump had to be changed in one pit stop, which was quite dramatic. They finished 4th. The Penske Porsches were 2nd and 3rd. Ferrari's 5th and 6th. And Jenson Button 7th in the private Porsche. And Peugeot, BMW and Alpine finished the top 10. So lots of variation, and that's what's so good about World Endurance Championship. I love the BMWs with their big, obvious kidney-shaped grills, whereas most of the other manufacturers don't have quite such a sort of identity, which is the idea of the World Endurance Championship, to have the regulations. So it's fantastic. But I kept on getting a bit involved as well. I couldn't concentrate for 6 hours because lots of other things going on. Because there was a football match at the same time going on somewhere, which I dropped in and out of. There was a brilliant golf. I got excited by the golf. I love golf. Congratulations, of course, to Robert McIntyre and a spectacular last hole putt win to win the Scottish Open, and Scotland was joyful. The Indycar was going on. I'll come to that in a minute at the same time as well.
Hang on. You've got to congratulate the Spanish as well, because they were far superior to the English in the football. If you're going through,
only because we had a useless manager, which people are now loving our manager, and I will not stop saying, well, he's the wrong manager.
I mean, everybody's our manager. We're not talking about football, but get rid of Southgate, please. And you've got to congratulate.
Well, we were there. We saw around.
We
went to Germany and saw how boring they were playing, and he just plays the same on Harry Kane. Bless him. I mean, he was injured in Germany. He wasn't.
We're not talking about football. Move along the bus, please. Thank you. Anyway, could please explain to our viewers and listeners about the balance of power in WEC, because one thing we do on this podcast, we just talk about things, but we got a little bit more time this week because there wasn't that much racing. So the balance of power, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it have to be there? Because for me,
it has to be there if you want all the manufacturers to be involved. I mean, this is why you can't go that far in Formula One. We've got to keep away from that. Formula One has to be the only sort of iconic thing at the top. But you know, I mean, years ago, it was so simple in my Group C days, the last real, which we're now repeating, almost fantastic Group sports car championships, because we just all had a set amount of fuel. You could have whatever engine size you want, and turbos and small ones, and you just had a fuel, which meant there was a lot of lifting and coasting. So we weren't driving flat out always. Some circuits worse than others. We had to lift and coast, but that was the simple regulation. But now they sort of wanted hybrid in, and I think as soon as they started letting the diesels in for Audi, I don't know how many donkeys years ago that was, that they straight away had a huge difference in the engine format and different types of fuel. And so ever since that, we've sort of had to keep on having these balances of powers to keep other manufacturers from walking away forever.
How long has it been in, Tiff, the balance of power?
The new regulate, the balance of power has been there since those diesels turned up, I'd say, whatever that was, 10, 15 years ago now. But when Toyota was dominating and they wanted to get more manufacturers involved, they came up with this new hybrid scheme, and they merged with America. That's a big thing, because Americans got the Le Mans LMDH, which they call, I forget what they call them in America, where they're all on, you choose one of 4 chassis that are allowed, and you all have the same hybrid gearbox and differential. So the hybrid is a simple thing you plug on the back. You get a chassis from one of 4 manufacturers, and then you put new bodywork on and do lots of other bits and bobs. So that's one balance. And because the other ones, the hypercars of FIA, they're all made by the manufacturer. The whole car is fully manufactured up. So there's 2 different classes for beginners. So you've got to try and balance between that. And they're literally giving them an extra sort of, 5 horsepower or taking 5 kilograms off. I mean, it's tiny snippets because they're so equal now. But obviously you can't have it from track to track, and this is the only problem with balance of power. You almost need a different balance of power for every circuit.
Absolutely.
Le Mans, with its long straights, is going to suit one manufacturer more than others, and then you come to obviously Sao Paolo seem to suddenly switch the Toyotas on. Who knows why? I don't know why. But to get the manufacturers all having a go, you have to give them all a chance of winning. Otherwise, they're not going to play. And that's the way the world's because it gets so expensive now. You know, in the old days, you know, manufacturer may not have cared so much about building a quick Group C car because they were quite cheap to make. But if you're going to invest in these modern day hybrids, you're going to have to invest a lot of money. And if you tell your board of directors you've got no chance of winning because the Toyota engineers are spending more than us, you know, it takes away that, you know, buying the victories by just spending more and more money. Well, like, you know, you look at Goodwood, go back to there, you know, I don't get impressed with an electric thing called a transit van winning the race.
Yeah, me neither.
It's like Audi going off and doing the Pikes Peak. You know, I mean, if you spend a lot of money on a vehicle with no regulations attached to it, you know, you can obviously buy a win. You can buy a win in any category. So
me too. So for those of you who didn't see, they do a shootout at Goodwood every year, and the fastest car takes the prize. And what a lovely chap! The transit van guy, Ford won it. Then, but anyway, third place
was a Porsche
second.
Was a Porsche second or third? A proper race car.
Do you know what? This kid was so nice. I went up on the first run with him. He'd never been up Goodwood before ever in his life. On Thursday morning, we both went up together Thursday morning, and his first ever trip up. He said, "I'm looking forward to Sunday because I'm going to drive something a bit faster." He went up in a KN V8, the same one as I did on Thursday morning, and they said, "I'm going to drive something faster at the end of the week, going to get in the cup car." And he bloody, how do these kids do it? Must be fearless because it's tricky up there.
No.
But yeah, so that was good. I'm with you. I don't like all these different cars, and also the Ferrari. The Mom-winning WEC car was there going up the hill as well, which was
did it?
Beautiful looking cars, yeah, beautiful.
That's what I love about World Endurance Championship. You know, they've got a format of wing size and aero, and they just look great. And the racing side by side, as I said, you know, I couldn't follow it all because I was following other things at the same time. But it's an enthusiast thing to go and watch 6 hours. But you need your radio plugged in and listen to the great commentary and work out the energy they've all got. In the GT3s, there are only 3 retirements. Amazing. I mean, look at how reliable they are. 6 hours. Now, only the Assotta Fraccini retired from the hypercar class. So that was 19, wasn't it? So 18 survived. There are actually only 3 retirements in total. The Iron Dames, bless them. Again, they were on pole position, the 3 ladies. In their Lamborghini, and were battling hard for the lead with a eventually winning Porsche before they came in. The whole thing steamed itself to death. There must have had a water pipe go or something.
It was a Lamborghini's weekend in certainly in Brazil anyway.
That's what I'm talking about,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. And we miss Sarah Bovey at Goodwood. She's always a good character at Goodwood.
The 3, they're all down there. When Aston Martin was the only other one to retire. So amazing, you know, the reliability going on. The GT3, it was won by the Porsche. Aston Martin was second. Then 2, the United McLarens came 3rd and 4th. So all winners all round. A fabulous thing to watch, sit back. And in a way, you didn't really have to follow the race. You could go and watch something else for an hour and come back and just see some spectacular overtaking for 30 minutes and catch up with how the race was going and then go make a cup of tea and come back again and watch the end of the race. So it was the most entertaining motorsport because Indycar would go off. So we go back to America now.
Iowa?
And Indycar, Iowa, this 7/8 mile speedway, which it's been resurfaced, which makes it worse. It's always been a bit of a single lane, you know, you can't overtake 7/8 of a mile, 180 miles an hour. You don't brake much. Good to see Catherine Legg was back after she's only made 2 IndyCar runs the last 2 years. She had 2 attempts at the Indy 500. But Dale Coyne Racing, the team that's been running almost a different driver every weekend in this 51 car. Obviously, some bring a bit of money or some bring sponsorship, and it's just, which is one. Imagine doing Formula One. We're going to change the driver every weekend.
Bloody amazing!
We'll bring great publicity to your race in Britain because we'll put a British driver in your Ferrari, and we'll bring a different driver. It would be so exciting because it was the car that Toby Sowery, who's never raced at the top level, raced last weekend at.
So they just change the livery every time, do they?
Yeah,
she's racing pink, I think. Does she still race in pink?
Yeah, she's got a sponsor with a cosmetic sponsor. But almost all the teams now, they're wrapping the car different every week. They're getting different money.
Okay.
To survive at IndyCar, they are turning up. A lot of the mid teams with different sponsors every week. So Catherine came out. She's in her mid-40s now, and she finished at the back in both races. But it's just great to see her out there. I mean, she's probably the best British female driver we ever had. You know, she's won in Formula Atlantic, which was, you know, what's Indy NXT as it is now. So a really good driver and still loving racing. But this Iowa 7/8 mile, they repaved some of it. Repaved, that's an American word, isn't it? Resurfaced the sort of inner line in the corners. But it's always been a sort of one-line track, and this has made it worse because the higher lanes then were older surface, a different grip. They have this wonderful qualifier, which I enjoyed on the Saturday, because you just do 2 laps, single file. You go one at a time, which you do at Indy NXT. Most ovals are like this, and they went out. You did 1.5 laps warming up, and then you start your first time lap, averaging 185 miles an hour around a 7/8 mile. It's like the Mallory Park Oval. It's about the same size as that, I think.
Gerrard's?
With walls. Well, no, Gerrard's, when you cut in the pit lane, you don't do up to the hairpin bit. You just do the oval shape, which they used to race the Euro cars there. So your first time lap is your grid position for race 1, because it was a double header weekend, and your second time lap is your grid position for race 2, and then you're back in the pits. Get up a cup of tea. So that doesn't take long. There was a few they've got hybrid now, which has added 60 horsepower to their push to pass. A couple of cars didn't have the hybrid working, so there's a few hiccups there, which there always is, but it seemed to be working pretty well, the hybrid.
Does any formula do what I've done at Caterham occasionally is a super pole, where you go out for a one flying lap as well? So the top 10, for example.
Well, not one. But touring cars now do a 15 or 10-minute top 6, don't they? All go out. They don't go out one by one.
Okay. The one because I quite like because Caterham, of course, is such a massive toe. So they separate it by, say, whatever the track is. If it was Silverstone, I did that at Silverstone a few years ago.
But one car at a time.
Yeah, they maybe 30-second delay, maybe 40-second delay. So there's absolute zero toe, and only did it with the top 10. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
It's quite quick as well. If you get it,
some Caterham drivers I've worked with are obsessed with getting a toe. I was trying to coach some youngster a few years back in the academy. Anyway, so the trouble is the racing wasn't. Nobody really overtook unless there were yellows. And in the first race, there were quite a few yellows with various people clattering into each other. And when they have a yellow, they clean up, take all the dirt and dust that's on the high line, the lane 2, as it were, the outside line. So for like 3 laps, you almost got equal grip in lane 1 and 2. And so there were a lot of overtaking on the restarts after a yellow period. So that made the first race entertaining. And in fact, Colton Herta was on pole, was in the pits, and one of the yellows was Alex Palou, championship leader, superstar. They were filming a pit stop. There he was crashing in the back of shot at the same time. But the fact that he crashed while poor old Herta was in the pits meant that he lost a lap, because he then went yellow and he's at the pits, so he'd been lapped. So it ruined Colton Herta's race. The always controversial Santino Ferrucci was one of the stars. He's always a lunatic overtaking on these restarts. Every restart, he was going up high around people, ducking back inside. Very, very entertaining. Not that some of our listeners
lunatic, good lunatic or bad lunatic?
Well, no, over here he was a bit racist to his teammate. And there was lots of nasty stuff happened when he came into Europe, which a lot of Europeans won't ever forgive him for. So he wasn't a popular man when he came to race in Formula 3 or Formula 2, I forget which it was. But he certainly entertained in that race 1, which was won eventually by Scotty McLaughlin, who was second on the grid, who was leading Herta when Herta was caught by the yellows. But he was just cruising around, and they're all cruising around. And that was the evening race on Saturday. And the Sunday race, there were hardly any, I think there were any yellows at all. And it just became this procession of cars just following each other around, no overtaking. But bizarrely, the winner was Will Power. And this is why you never give up in IndyCar or NASCAR, because he qualified 23rd. I think he had a bit of a moment, because that's why the qualifying was exciting. You could, when they're on their own, they were twitching. They were catching 185 mile an hour twitches, which was pretty frightening with the walls so close. So he started 23rd, and he just cruised around saving fuel, because he thought, well, I can't overtake anybody. But he just cruised around. And they just had this plan that if they got lucky with a yellow, they would then be able to jump people because they could stay out longer. So he stayed out longer and longer, on the overcutting. This is, isn't it? And all of a sudden, when he was in, he went into the pits and there was a yellow. So he just jumped like 16 cars or something. In fact, he came out second. So having been cruising around to 23rd, he obviously moved up to the front when all the others pitted early. But and then there was another yellow, and he overtook Palou in the pits on a second pit stop.
horrific for everybody else.
So he then won it.
Racing
But
their
he came
hearts
one.
off. Oh.
And then, so he's now leading, and he catches up back markers, about the 14th place, Nolan Siegel, I think it was. And he's now got Polo on his gearbox. And he just sat behind the back marker because he couldn't overtake the back marker. There's no blue flags. That's the big thing about American racing. You fight to stay on the lead lap in case a yellow comes out, which I quite like that thing. But, you know, even though he was behind the back marker, who finished 14th, he couldn't overtake them. And the guy behind him, Polo, couldn't overtake him. And so it was just a bit of a procession. It was spectacular, around 7/8 of a mile at 185 miles an hour. But there was this huge shunt that's more on the Twitter today because on the
I saw
Rossi,
that.
Yeah, Rossi was running out of fuel, which is one of the most scary things in IndyCar. Indianapolis 500, it's often, you know, the last lap, you're running out of fuel and you're slipstreaming the guy in front of him and he just stutters. And, you know, and this kid, lovely name, where have I written his name now? Stingray Rob just went in the back of Rossi, just took off over the back of his car and tumbled and rolled a while whilst Rossi went and clashed with Carl Kirkwood, Ed Carpenter, and Carpenter's car ended up with the rear wheel on the top of Carl Kirkwood's cockpit with that windscreen. The trouble with the windscreen, you can't get out at all. We've got a wheel in your roof. So he was pretty puffed, but it was a huge shunt. I said, that's how the only yellow of the race was when Canapino broke down. That's what gave Will Power the win because one car broke down. So, you know, wasn't that entertaining going round?
Sell a dull fest. Let's move to back to
Indy NXT again. The Indy NXTs were there with Oliver, with Chadwick and Louis Foster and the Andretti cars again. With
very, very well.
Well, they qualified 1, 2, 3. So obviously the Andretti team, which got an IndyCar team as well, had the right tweak for going fast around this 7/8 mile over. They averaged 170. The pole for IndyCar was 188, so they're pretty quick. 170, these rookies. As I said, they finished. But James Rowe, the Irish boy, was ahead of Foster on the grid, with Jamie Chadwick third. But Foster got the start. James Rowe got the start and just led. But Jamie Chadwick, again, she showed what I've seen before. You know, the two boys up the front pulled away immediately. And Jamie's just defending from the word go. You know, sometimes
it goes like that sometimes, Tiff.
I know.
It goes sometimes it happens that way. And especially if you are third or fourth, you get a bit of bad luck.
She faded to 7th in the end. But Louis Foster sort of waited behind Rowe for a lap after lap. There was more overtaking actually than NXTs because the cars, the talent was a bit more varied and rookies out there and go and more crashes. But it seems like Louis just played the waiting game in case the tyres wore out. There's a lot of blistering worries. They just overtook Rowe and won yet another race. It was almost 3 or 4 of the trot. He's got a huge championship lead now. So Louis Foster, hopefully going to IndyCar to wave the British flag next year. But he'll probably need a bit of money to do it.
Who else has won IndyCar? What other Brits won IndyCar? Obviously Mansell.
Well, Frank Kitty was a big IndyCar champion. Loads.
Have there?
Jim Clark won the Indy 500. So did Graham Hill. Who else has been out more recently? All sorts.
Okay. But who's won the championship? The overall championship, the Indy champion?
I don't know.
Okay.
All right.
You should
Frank Kitty. I'm sure Frank Kitty did.
That's your job. You should know everything about every bit of motorsport ever.
Go Google it. So that was, but also in America, NASCAR wasn't exciting either. So the American Sunday evening, clashing with the football, clashing with the golf, clashing with everything. Again, a wonderful circuit. It's this weird, tricky triangle, they call it. 2.5 miles, but only 3 corners. So it's got sort of 2 quick corners and more of a long hairpin with huge and wide. And it's not very banked either. So it was spectacular because they come down, and the straight's the widest straight in the world. It's wider than any runway you've ever been on. And they'll go 5 wide into turn 1 on the restart. So inevitably towards the end of the race, there were some clashes and crashes and more yellows and yellows bred yellows. But once they sort of start 5 wide, then they get 4 wide and 3 wide and 2 wide. If there hasn't been a yellow, they end up single file and overtaking, looking very hard. So no great overtakes, no great racing, but plenty of sort of drama towards the back. But Ryan Blaney came up the winner, romped to win. He was quite far away. There was no late yellows to upset him. Kyle Larson led out of the pits towards the last pit stops, and then he got done for speeding in the pit lane, one of several, got pinged. The whole pit lane segmented with these computers. You've only got to go a mile an hour too fast through one little segment, maybe 10 yards long, and you get pinged.
What?
So
So it's not the same speed like most pit lanes where you come in, you got the line, and you got to go to.
They haven't got
80
limiters. They've got to do it on their rev counters. So
Wow.
it's actually skill, yeah. If you
Wow.
watch an IndyCar race, on the opening warm-up laps, the pace car takes you through the pit lane at your 50 miles an hour. So you have to check your revs, what your speed is. So, yeah, they haven't got electronic devices to stop them speeding. So it's one of the skills of being a NASCAR driver. What was it? The other car, Carl Busch, had a huge shunt, and we had a wonderful Carl Busch entertainment, because it was one of the restarts. They were almost going 6 wide. I think Corey LaJoie went down the inside of Kyle towards turn 1, and Kyle squeezed him a bit. And then Corey LaJoie, then either deliberately or accidentally, when trying to come back into the pack, turned Busch around into the middle of the pack. It was mayhem, about 5 or 6 cars hitting the walls. And Carl Busch has had an awful season. He's one of the real characters of NASCAR. So he was interviewed. He did one of his famous ones where, so big crash their car, how do you see it happening? I'd just like to thank my sponsors. They whittled off all the names of sponsors. We've had a great weekend out. We've been unfortunate, unlucky. We're going to move on to the next race. He either goes mental and just goes off at the other driver, or does this sort of, I'm ignoring it. We had a lovely weekend here. Lovely weekend. Small problem. And but he's not going to make the playoffs, I don't think, this year, unless he suddenly gets his car working. So again, not a thriller. Not a thriller, entertaining, but not the thriller. We're always looking for thrillers. Come home to Donington, World Superbikes.
Wait, before we go to Donington. So all I can see is you were right about Dario Franchitti, 2007, 2009, 2010, 2011. Wow, 4 years in a row. Right. I can't see any other British drivers that have won it.
Mark
what about
Blundell raced out there a lot. Mark Blundell.
Dan Weldon.
Dan Weldon, of course, sadly killed. Yeah.
I'm sure he's on it, but he's Nigel Mansell, Andretti. Yeah. So yes, there you go. There's very few. Dan Weldon, he won it in 2005. That's sad, isn't it, when you look back at things like that? Because no disrespect, but you sort of forget about these people. But life goes on, I guess, sadly. But okay, back to the UK.
Yeah, another dull race, more dull racing, because Top Brag Razgatlioglu and his BMW, he's getting silly now. I mean, he's checking out and winning Superbike races by 8 seconds or something at Donington. Spectacular, no doubt, wasn't really there. Best Brit was Alex Lowe's in his Kawasaki, that had a second, a fifth, and a third. And it was good as Scott Reddy, who's got a BMW, but he was the big dream for BMW about 4 years ago, and he spent most of his time finishing one outside the top 10. But maybe Razgatlioglu has razzed him up a bit, and he came home to Donington, and he had a couple of fourth places, but still nowhere near.
Donington's a great place for bikes. Donington's a great place to race for pretty much anything, I think. They're a lovely circuit. If you don't know it, there's undulation, there's long straights. It's really cool place. And it's a really good place to watch as well, if ever you want to go and watch some live racing. You can see quite a lot from single places.
And then the other big event in Britain was the British GT up at Snetterton, where the Barwell Lamborghinis dominated, winning both races, Alex Martin and Sandy Mitchell. But they didn't, in the end, win the second one, because Martin was pinged for a yellow flag infringement, and they were dropped to 10th place. So the second race win actually went to the Mercedes of Kevin C. and Maximilian Gotts.
And for those who don't know, when he gets smug about Barwell, it's because his brother runs Barwell Motorsports.
Commercial director.
There you go.
So,
can you give us some tips on getting some sponsorship?
No, it's useless. He just takes the money. It comes to them. He has to manage it. That's probably not fair. They do. They're always out because it's always looking for drivers that bring the funding. But they've now got a partner that's this Black Bull whiskey. So a partner of the company. So it's looking good.
I tell you what, Black Bull whiskey. No, we can't get in the drinks. We've got Dutch Barn vodka. We don't want Black Bull whiskey.
They got pinged. I don't even know the particular moment when he got pinged for a yellow flag. But sometimes when you see them lapping the GT3 cars, these are the little Lamborghini, and quite often they'll catch, two GT3 cars, GT4, sorry, he's in a GT3, GT4s, they'll be battling side by side, and you're following them in your Lamborghini low down, trying to wait to overtake and wait for the gap. He could well have been pinged because he couldn't see where he was going. So really, all the world. I mean, the best entertainment was the sports cars. They just looked fabulous, but no exhilarating races to bring you. So hopefully, your Caterham story will end with. Was there exhilarating racing? Where were they this weekend?
Well, they were at Cadwell Park, so there's not a chance I was going to go there. I was at Goodwood anyway, but yeah, that's well. You tell people what Cadwell Park's like. It's
the best track in
school,
Britain. That's where you should be in your Caterham. It's a wonderful drive. It's our mini Nürburgring. But sadly, it's too narrow really for modern cars. Sad. I was Formula 3. I finished second in Formula 3. I chased Nelson Piquet home all the way on slicks on a damp track at Cadwell Park. And I won my last Formula 4 2000 race there as well when I was hoping to win the championship. Took the championship lead into the final round.
I was just going to run through a couple of the winners actually, but I was looking because there's a couple of brothers, James and Dan Hall. James and David Hall, and they are both in the academy. One's in the white group, one's in the green group. So for those who don't know Caterham, that's how they start the academy. And they both had a win in their respective groups. I was just quickly looking at TSL to see if I could see who came out on top at Silverstone when all 50 were on the grid, because that's interesting that the two brothers are racing in academy against.
Yeah. Did the academy go to Cadwell with you? Did you go to Cadwell with Academy?
I've never raced at Cadwell.
It wasn't on the calendar that year.
No. Well, it was. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was the second year, but I missed that. Ben Timmons in. So hang on. Then we got Paul Goldstein in 2.7 in road sport. He had another win. He's doing really well. Ben Timmons, he's won another 3. He's the Freddie Slater of.
So Caterham. It sounds boring. I came to you for some Cadwell Park Caterhams, having explained that around the world the races were a bit processional, and you haven't actually offered any
let me
close
clarify.
Battles at all.
Let me just clarify that we are talking tenths of just a few tenths between many cars here. So
have you actually got that result? Are you making that up?
No, I've got TSL in front of me. There were 3 different winners in 310. Harry Cook, Tom Willis, and I don't know who the third one was because Ben Timmons is so good. TSL have got him down as winning the 310s, one of the 310 races. So, but look, Caterham Racing is always unbelievably close. So shout out to the winners,
the Caterham boys
and next girls. And girls. Next up for Caterham is Knock Hill. So that's always a good
one. Not going there. You won't see me.
Clockwise and anti-clockwise.
Do they have to drive their academy? Aren't you supposed to drive your academy car?
Nah, they encourage it, but most of the people have got a couple of quid.
You drove to Crofton back, didn't you? One on the same day.
Tiff is the best race I've ever been to in my life. It was the best race. I got in with my girlfriend at the time. And it was my daughter's birthday, and I said to you all, "Shall I go? Because I'm not going to see my daughter now. She's going to see her mum." But anyways, you said absolutely go for it. And so we left at 4 a.m, packed the car up, drove up to Croft. Never even looked at it on a video, on a sim. Did a track walk. I finished 7th. That was my best race day. Then drove back from Croft, which that's
how racing should be.
4 hours drive. Yeah, it was brilliant. Loved it. That's what Caterham's all about for me.
Well, the classic Formula Fords want me to bring my Formula Ford out again, because they're short on numbers this year. But I keep on saying, if it was a one-day meeting, it's the Brands Hatch Super Prix at the end of the month. And also weekend when the M25's blocked. I can't get the home and back because the M25's shut. That A3.
Go to where we got a lovely trailer.
I've got to change my fire extinguisher because my fire extinguisher's out of date.
I've got a fire extinguisher you can have in the Caterham. You can use this one. Just swap it over. Why not?
Not going. All right. If it was a one-day meeting, meeting. It's not. It's a whole weekend.
Well, just go for one of the races. Go for one of the days.
I will come out again. Don't bully me.
I'll take the car, and you just.
Let's talk about next weekend. Next weekend back to Formula One.
You have to do a race, Tiff. You haven't raced for so long.
I will. It'll come.
The last time you raced, forget Goodwood because that's Formula One, Schmudwood, all your hospitality. Last time you raced was at Castle Combe about 3 years ago. You need to do a race. Please do it at the end of the month. That'd be amazing if you do. I'll take the car there. I'll tow it, and you can just turn up like a racing driver.
I'm working on the Saturday anyway.
We'll go on the Sunday.
They won't let you in for one. That's the point. It's a whole weekend.
They know who you are. They will. I'm going to phone them. Okay, we're going to sort out the Sunday. I'm going to get my pit crew, Harry Needell, in the pit crew. and we're going to go up on the Sunday. And what's coming up next week?
Hungary. Talk about overtaking. Here we go now. Hungary, the non-overtaking Grand Prix track. All the drivers love it. I'm sure if you change the track with a couple of bypasses of certain sections, it'll be a much, much better Grand Prix track. F2s and F3s there. Hungaroring. So all about qualifying. It'll be all about qualifying again.
You say Porsche, I say Porsche, I say Hungaroring.
Hungaro,
is it?
And I don't know. Make it up myself. IndyCar, the very exciting Toronto street track. Now, that is always a spectacular overtaking and close walled. They've got long straight where they get their buttons pushed to pass and lots of action. That will be a good race to watch. IndyCar should be. So if you fall asleep watching Hungary, make sure you set your alarm to be on Sky Sports F1, same channel, boom, straight to Toronto.
Who's going to win Formula One next week? What's your tip?
I don't know. It has to be Lando. This has to be it, doesn't it? Lando.
What do you mean it has to be? He's won.
They keep cocking up. They should have won the last three, shouldn't they?
I got a story to tell you. I forgot. You asked who I met, who I caught up with. So just a refresher. Last year, when I had a little incident with a wing on a Porsche, at the top of the hill, Mark Webber came up to me and said, "It's a fucking scratch, mate. Don't even worry about it." So I saw Mark. We were with Porsche, and
he's a lovely lad. Mark's a lovely.
I said, you won't remember me, but before I could say anything, I said, "Of course I fucking remember you." As if to say, you're the
bloke that knocked the wing off.
But we had a good chat about Oscar, and we you've agreed, we've said it non-stop that his time will come, and because the belief is in the paddock that he's as fast as Lando. So I'm going to go on
Oscar.
That.
Could well be.
I'm going to go for Oscar.
So both go
McLaren.
McLaren in Hungary. World Rally Championship goes to Latvia, where Elfyn Evans continues to
sorry for my language, by the way, everybody. I was just quoting an ex-Formula One driver.
NASCAR returns to the Indy Oval. For the last 3 years, they've had their NASCAR Indy race at Indianapolis. The NASCAR race at Indianapolis on the road circuit. It's never been a good race. That track's rubbish as well. Another track that doesn't work for overtaking. So they're back for the Brickyard 400. They're celebrating the 40th anniversary, I think, of racing somewhere in NASCAR. So I think the drivers are happy, but again, spectator-wise, it's a bit single file around the Indy road speedway. In fact, I went there with Harry. We went to America with another family and drove across from New York to. It was a great trip. If you can't make the Indy 500, you can still go to Indianapolis and go to the speedway and go to Chicago. So I don't think it'll be a very exciting race, but it could be. They're also around. We've got Super Formula in Japan at Fuji, Supercars at Sydney, British Superbikes. We come home, the only thing to go to watch in England with British Superbikes at, I can't remember writing, there's a squiggle. I've got a squiggle. Where are they this weekend?
He was a doctor in a previous life.
Oh, no. Well, I can't remember. Brands. I think they're Brands Hatch. Is that the Grand Prix circuit, which is epic? I think the Brands Hatch. I do have to mention, out of duty to the world, to be fair, that there is some some milk floats going around the London exhibition hall somewhere in their last two races.
We didn't even do a wrap up of Extreme E because they were racing this weekend. And,
God, in Scotland, weren't they? Mucky rolling over. They do roll over. Well, if you want to watch rolling over, then Extreme E is well worth going to watch some crashes. But I should be watching. If I was going to go out the weekend, it'd be the British Superbikes. And there you have it.
So when you go to Revival, please have a word with your mate Damon Hill. Tell him off for me. No, don't tell him off. But just it was very out of character for everything that you've said.
What did Paul do to upset you?
I didn't do anything.
You must have been
upset. I think something.
Will you film it? Have you filmed it? Have you camera in his face?
No. But there you go. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next week. Oh, and that's.
And Harry, like your commentary, Harry. I do like your commentary, Harry. As well. I've upset someone, and you've upset someone, and we both upset someone without knowing why we've upset them.
See you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.